How do you know if a homeschool curriculum is actually teaching your child what they need to know? Because if you've ever searched best homeschool curriculum, you already know there are thousands of options. Some are beautiful, some are cheap, some are completely free, some cost hundreds of dollars. If you're homeschooling in New York, the question isn't just, will my kids like this? I also want to know, what are they actually learning? Are there gaps? Does this give me enough to build a strong homeschool program? And can I document what we're doing when it comes time to complete my IHIP and quarterly reports? Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Johi. I'm a mompreneur, homeschool mom, and education consultant. I've spent 15 years working in public education. During that time, I worked with state standards, administered New York State assessments, benchmarked students, collected data, reviewed student progress, and spent a lot of time looking at whether students were actually mastering what we were teaching. And I think that background has made me look at homeschool curriculum a little bit differently. Pretty doesn't automatically mean effective. Fun doesn't automatically mean there's enough content. And just because a curriculum says it's for third grade doesn't necessarily mean it's covering everything I want my third grader to learn. So today I'm sharing the curriculum I've chosen for our first and third grade homeschool year. What I like about each program, what I don't like, and how I combine different resources to make them work for my kids. And just to be clear before we get started, New York doesn't require homeschool families to use one specific state approved program. We as parents choose our curriculum and materials as we please. Our responsibility is making sure our overall homeschool program covers the required subjects and that we're meeting the state's home instruction requirements. So these aren't the only curricula you can use in New York. However, these are the ones I've chosen after looking at what my children need, what New York State requires us to teach, and what actually works in our house. Let's get into it. When I first started homeschooling, I did what I think a lot of new homeschool parents do. I downloaded all the freebies, I bought all the $12 PDFs. If it had cute graphics, colorful worksheets, and looked like something my kids would enjoy, I downloaded it. But I quickly realized something. A lot of what I had collected was basically beautiful graphic organizers with very little actual instruction behind them. I had folders and folders of activities, but I didn't necessarily have a curriculum. And there is a difference. An activity can help your child practice something. A curriculum should give you some type of progression. What am I teaching? In what order? What skills are we building? What should my child understand before we move on? That's eventually what led me to the good and the beautiful. And I have to tell you, I loved the good and the beautiful. There are still a lot of things I love about it. We used it for 2 years, and one of my favorite things about the language arts program is how much they integrate into one curriculum. You're doing reading, phonics, spelling, writing, and literature, but you're also getting exposure to things like geography and art. For me, that made homeschooling so much easier. Instead of feeling like I needed 8 separate books open on the table, I could cover several areas through one lesson. And it's really very open and go. I still recommend looking through your lessons ahead of time because I think you should always know what you're about to teach, but there's very little daily preparation. My kids also really enjoyed it. They liked the stories, they liked the games, they liked the activities, and I especially liked the spiral review in math because previously learned skills continued to come back instead of disappearing the second we moved into a new unit. But after using the good and the beautiful for about 2 years, I started noticing something. There were areas where I felt my kids needed more explicit instruction and more depth. I want to make that distinction clear. I'm not saying the good and the beautiful is a bad curriculum. I'm saying that when I compared what my kids were doing with the skills I wanted them to master and the New York State standards that I was familiar with from teaching, I saw areas that I wanted to strengthen. So I didn't completely get rid of the good and the beautiful. I'm still using it. I'm just using it differently. And again, to be clear, as homeschoolers, we're not required to teach the standards, but there were certain things that I did want my kids to walk away with. This year for reading and math, we're using curriculum from All About Learning Press as our primary instruction. So we'll be using All About Reading and All About Math. And there are some major differences between these programs and the good and the beautiful. One thing I really like about All About Learning is how explicit the instruction is. There is much more direct teaching. The teacher's manual walks you through what you're teaching, what language to use, what questions to ask, and how to model the skill. The lessons are also very hands on and multisensory, which I love. For math, for example, there are manipulatives, games, and concrete representations that help kids actually see what the numbers are doing instead of only memorizing a procedure. And throughout the lesson, I'm constantly asking my kids questions. Not just what's the answer, but how did you figure that out? Can you show me another way? Why do you think that works? What do you notice? That's important to me because I don't want my kids to simply memorize how to get an answer. I want them to think and understand. Now, technically, All About Learning Press describes these programs as scripted and open and go. And technically, yes, I can open the teacher's manual and follow the script. But I'm going to tell you what that looks like in my house. For me, this requires more preparation than the good and the beautiful. The student materials are separate from the teacher's manual, so I like to look through the teacher's lesson ahead of time. I want to know what I'm teaching. I want to know which materials I'm going to need. And sometimes there are manipulatives, cards, activities, or things I want to organize before I sit down with my kids. Could you open the book 5 minutes before the lesson and teach it? Probably. Would that make me absolutely crazy and have me feeling inefficient? Definitely yes. So I prep. If you want to see what that looks like, I have another video called Before You Teach All About Math Level 3, where I show you how I organize everything before we start the lesson. All About Learning recommends relatively short lessons, and you'll see the 20-minute recommendation throughout their materials. I love this idea. My reality, some lessons take us longer, and that's okay. Going back to this idea of preparing before the lessons, I usually am able to tell when a lesson will go beyond that 20-minute cutoff time, and so I choose a good stopping point. Sometimes one lesson takes us 2 or 3 days, and that's something I really want new homeschool parents to hear. You don't have to finish a lesson because the book calls it one lesson. The curriculums work for you. You don't work for the curriculum. Now you know what I like about All About Learning. So let's talk about what I don't like because I'm never going to come on here and tell you a curriculum is perfect. One of my biggest complaints is actually connected to one of its strengths. There is a lot of explicit teaching, which means there's a lot of teacher talk. Sometimes I'm looking at my kids as they're fidgeting with everything in sight, thinking, don't snap, stop talking and let them practice. And for my kids, I personally want more independent written practice than the program sometimes provides. There are games, there are hands on activities, there is practice built into the program, but a lot of it involves me. And I don't want every single part of homeschool to require me to have to sit next to them. My kids also need opportunities to take what I've taught them and work independently. And this is exactly where the good and the beautiful comes back in. This year, I'm teaching the concepts primarily through All About Reading and All About Math. Then I look through the good and the beautiful for independent practice that matches the skills we're working on. So, if we're working on a particular multiplication concept in All About Math, I'll look for corresponding practice in the good and the beautiful. Same idea for reading and language arts. I'm not teaching two complete curricula. Please don't do that to yourself. I'm using one as my primary teaching curriculum and pulling from the other when I want additional practice or another way to reinforce a skill. Does matching everything up take a little bit more time? Yes. But so far, I like the balance. I get the explicit instruction I wanted from All About Learning, and I still get some of the independence and variety I liked from The Good and the Beautiful. Another thing that makes this easier is that The Good and the Beautiful currently allows families to download its K through 8 language arts and math courses as free PDFs. So this year, I didn't buy all the physical books from The Good and the Beautiful. I downloaded the levels I wanted and I print the pages I'm actually going to use. For science and geography this year, we're using layers of learning. One of the reasons this program appealed to me is that it's designed for families with children of different ages to learn together. And if you homeschool multiple children, you already know why that sounds amazing. I do not want to teach three completely separate science lessons if I don't have to. Layers of Learning uses a family style approach where you can explore the same general topic together but adjust the books, discussions, assignments, and activities according to your child's age and ability. Their overall program is organized around cycles in subjects such as science, geography, history, and the arts. And something I really like is that it's intentionally flexible. You aren't expected to do every single activity in the book. You pick and choose. That's actually important because one mistake homeschool parents make is thinking, I paid for this curriculum, therefore we must complete every page. No. If there are 7 activities and 2 of them are perfect for your family, just do those 2. I want curriculum to give me options, not control my life. Now, let's get into something that I did not expect myself to recommend: an app. I know, an app to teach my kids art and music? I was skeptical too. But over the summer, my kids started using Simply Draw and Simply Piano, and we also explored Simply Sing, and they absolutely loved it. More importantly, I could actually see them learning. With Simply Draw, my 6-year-old daughter started learning specific drawing techniques and then applying those techniques to her own work. I'll show you some examples. This is some of her drawing before using Simply Draw. And this is what she was producing after spending time learning some of the techniques in the app. That difference happened really quickly. And with Simply Piano, they're actually sitting at the keyboard practicing and getting feedback as they play. Now, am I saying that an app is identical to having a great private music or art teacher? No. But for what our family needs this year, it works. And financially, it made more sense for us than paying for multiple private lessons every week. Plus, my kids will happily spend an hour drawing, singing, or playing the piano. I don't have to chase them around saying, please do your art lesson. They're actually asking me if they can do it. That's a win. Last year, my kids attended an enrichment program where they were able to do science and electives like music, cooking, art, Lego club, and gym. And we really did enjoy having that. But this year, we made a conscious decision not to commit ourselves to a weekly enrichment program because we wanted more freedom in our schedule. We want to experiment with world schooling. So, yes, we want to travel. We want to be able to take what we're learning and go experience it without constantly thinking, but we have to be back by Tuesday because we have class. So, that's another reason we've chosen resources that give us more flexibility this year. And I think that's something that's really important when you're choosing homeschool curriculum. Don't ask, why is this a good curriculum? Ask, is this a good curriculum for my child and for the life we're actually trying to live? Because the curriculum that is perfect for a family that wants to sit at the kitchen table every morning from 9 to 1 may be completely wrong for a family that wants to travel frequently. The curriculum that's perfect for an independent learner may drive a child who needs hands on instruction crazy. And the curriculum that one homeschool mom swears changed her life may sit unopened on your shelf, and that's okay. So, if you're shopping for homeschool curriculum, especially if you're homeschooling in New York, here's what I recommend. First, look at the scope and sequence. Don't just look at the covers and sample worksheets. What are they actually teaching? Next, think about your child. Do they need explicit instruction? Do they need hands on activities? Can they work independently? Do they need a lot of repetition? Do they become bored with a lot of repetition? And then think about yourself because you matter in this equation too. How much preparation are you realistically willing to do? Do you want scripted lessons? Do you want open and go? Do you enjoy planning and pulling together different resources? Or do you want somebody to hand you the book and tell you exactly what to do on Monday morning? There is no prize for choosing the curriculum that requires the most work from the parent. Choose something you're actually going to use. And finally, if you're homeschooling in New York, compare what you're using with the subjects you've listed on your iHip and make sure your overall program covers what you're responsible for teaching. You do not have to find one magical curriculum that does everything. I actually don't think it exists. I haven't found it. I'm pulling together different resources because that's what works best for my kids. And that's one of the best parts of homeschooling. We can change things when they're not working. So that's what we're using this year. All about reading and all about math for our primary reading and math instruction, the good and the beautiful as a supplement, especially when I want additional independent practice, layers of learning for science and geography, and the Simply apps for music and art. As we move through the year, I'll come back and give you updates because something looking amazing in August and something actually working with my kids in February are 2 very different things. If there's a curriculum you've been looking at and you want me to take a look at it, put the name in the comments. And if you found a curriculum that your kids absolutely love, share that too. I know there are parents reading those comments trying to figure out what to buy. I'll also link everything I'm using in the description below so you can look through the programs for yourself. I'll see you in the next video.